Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into one of the ancient world's absolute biggest enigmas, the Delphi Oracle. We're going to take this really fascinating journey, moving from ancient mystical trances and divine myth straight into modern geological science and even touching on some pretty deep philosophical puzzles. Think hallucinogenic gases, bizarre ancient rituals, and the ultimate quest to literally capture the voice of the gods. So to kick things off, let's look at this incredibly provocative thought from Socrates, recorded in Plato's Phaedrus. He says that the absolutely greatest gifts to humanity actually come through madness, specifically a divine madness. And this just perfectly sets up the ultimate mystery of ancient prophecy, right? You see, the Greeks didn't view madness as just some negative affliction. Nope. In the right context, it was this direct, unfiltered channel to the divine. It was literally the necessary mechanism for seeing into the future. Section 1, The Madness of Prophecy. Let's dive right in and explore exactly how the ancient Greeks understood this terrifying, awe-inspiring prophetic state. The linguistic root of all this is absolutely fascinating. Take the Indo-European root men. It essentially means to be in a special, altered state of consciousness or having an active mental force. And this single root birthed two very interesting Greek words, mania, meaning madness, and monteia, meaning prophecy. They are literal linguistic siblings. This just perfectly captures how the ancients fundamentally linked madness, mental power, and memory as the absolute essential ingredients for true prophetic vision. To prophesize at the Delphi Oracle, you quite literally had to lose your ordinary mind. But, pure madness does require some structure. There was this strict division of labor at the temple. On one hand, you have the Montes. These are the inspired visionaries, like the famous Pythia at Delphi, who are actually experiencing that altered state of divine madness. But working right alongside them are the Prophetae. These were the sober interpreters. So the crucial takeaway here is that true prophecy required a wildly altered state to receive the message, but making any actual sense of it, that required a completely sober interpreter to judge, translate, and deliver that message to the public. Well, how exactly did the Pythia enter this state? The ancient geographer Strabo gives us a really visceral image. He describes the Pythia sitting on a tripod over a cleft in the earth, inhaling this mysterious vapor, a divine breath, or pneuma, that just rises up and inspires ecstasy. For centuries, historians thought this was just a myth, just a story. But Strabo's description actually brings us to our next major question. Section 2. The Science of Sacred Breath. Let's see how this builds from an ancient mythological concept into a full-blown modern geological detective story. Get this. Modern geology has actually revealed active tectonic faults directly under the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. There's an active debate among scientists right now about what kind of gas actually triggered these legendary trances. On one side, we have the ethylene theory. Ethylene is a sweet-smelling gas once used as a medical anesthetic. In light doses, it causes this detached, euphoric state. Countering that is the hydrogen sulfide and methane theory. These gases are released during seismic activity, they have a distinct rotten egg smell, and they can heavily alter consciousness. Now, if we want a clue as to which theory might be right, we really should look at the myth itself. The archaic name for Delphi was Pytho, which connects to the Greek verb putho, meaning to rot. Legend claims this name comes from the rotting corpse of the giant serpent Python, who Apollo supposedly slew right at that exact spot. And this is where it gets crazy. The myth of the rotting serpent perfectly, and I mean perfectly, matches the actual real-world smell of hydrogen sulfide gas leaking from the seismic rocks below. The myth was literally preserving a geological reality. Section 3, the deadly Plutonian. Because, as it turns out, the connection between earthly vapors and the gods gets much deadlier when we look at the ancient city of Hierapolis. Over in Hierapolis, there was this temple built over a cave known as a Plutonion, dedicated to the underworld. And this cave was filled with a thick, toxic mist. Ancient writers noted that if you threw birds into it, they'd drop dead instantly. Even massive bulls let into the cave would just immediately collapse. Yet the eunuch priests of the goddess Cybele, known as the Gali, could walk right into this literal death sentence of a cave and miraculously survive. How? Well, modern observations suggest they likely just knew where the pockets of clean air were, or they simply held their breath as long as humanly possible. They'd emerge completely purple and gasping for air, but to the crowds, they seemed totally protected by the divine. It's an incredibly absurd, but highly effective ancient spectacle. And this deadly underground connection perfectly mirrors their intense week-long March festival dedicated to Cybele and her lover Attis. It traces this highly dramatic cycle, starting with the sorrowful death of Attis, progressing through intense mourning and actual bloody self-mutilation by the priests, until suddenly breaking into the Hilaria, the day of joy, celebrating resurrection and spring. So that physical descent into the toxic, deadly cave mirrored this exact spiritual journey from violent death to joyful rebirth. Section 4. From Trance to Text. With raw geological trance being so fleeting, totally unpredictable, and, as we just saw, sometimes lethal, we really have to ask, how did the ancients capture this divine magic for everyday people? To make prophecy accessible and, safe, they invented the Alphabet Oracle. It was a brilliantly simple, standardized system. You would roll some dice or draw a stone inscribed with a Greek letter. That letter corresponded to a specific word and a pre-written prophetic maxim. Draw an alpha, you will successfully accomplish everything. Draw a zeta, flee the great storm. It essentially allowed the magic of the Delphi Oracle to be bottled up, codified, and distributed without needing a priestess inhaling toxic volcanic gas. What's fascinating is that this alphabet oracle acts exactly like the philosophical concept of the pharmakon, a term famously analyzed by philosopher Jacques Derrida. A pharmakon is a substance that acts simultaneously as both a medicine and a poison. Think about it. Writing down the prophecy preserved it, curing its fleeting nature like a medicine. But at the very same time, it killed the live, bodily, ecstatic trance, acting as a poison to that pure, original experience of divine madness. Before we wrap up this analysis, I have to throw out a question that introduces a completely different biological source for this divine madness. What if the prophecy wasn't just pulled from the rotting gases of a geological fault line, but from a flower? Section 5. The Power of Mad Honey. Okay, let's explore the surprising ancient connection between Apollo, prophecy, and the art of beekeeping. In ancient myth, the bee was seen as the exact opposite of that rotting underworld serpent we talked about earlier. The serpent bites to kill, right? Its venom is pure poison representing death and decay. But the bee? The bee stings only to protect. And even more importantly, the bee safely navigates the dangerous boundaries of nature, extracting potentially toxic substances from plants and miraculously transforming them into sweet, nourishing, life-giving honey. But here's the catch. The ancients weren't just eating regular honey. In places like the Pontic Mountains, bees pollinating specific types of rhododendrons produced what is known as mad honey. This stuff contains grayanotoxin, a powerful neurotoxin. In low doses, it induces the exact euphoric, relaxed trance states needed for prophecy. But in high doses, it causes severe hallucinations, plummeting heart rates, and unconsciousness. Historically, this mad honey was a known biological shortcut, used by priestesses and cult followers to initiate sacred madness. And this brings our whole running theme right full circle. Just like the geological gases of the Delphi Oracle, and just like the written letters of the Alphabet Oracle, mad honey is the ultimate pharmakon in physical form. It's a sweet, life-giving food that simultaneously doubles as a dangerous, mind-bending poison. It sits right there on the knife's edge between healing and destruction, clarity and madness. Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder as we conclude this explainer. If all of this ancient wisdom, whether it came from a crack in the earth, a jar of toxic honey, or carved alphabet stone, required a medium that inherently cures and poisons at the exact same time, can we ever truly separate the pure, divine message from the intoxicating madness? Thanks so much for joining me, and stay curious.